Now let's look at events and event listeners. And if you've worked in JavaScript in HTML using the DOM, then you're probably familiar with action listeners and event processing there. So basically, in regular JavaScript in the browser, you might have a user interface element in your HTML like a button. And then you add an action listener to that button so that when the user clicks on the button, a piece of code gets run, a handler, an event handler. And that's the same exact idea as what we're doing here. The only difference is the syntax is a little bit different. It's actually closer to the syntax that you see in jQuery, if you remember on from jQuery. If you don't, that's okay, because I'm going to show it to you right now. So the basic idea is there's a class called EventEmitter, and we can get that class using something like const EventEmitter is require events. And I think this comes bundled with Node Package Manager when you install Node. I think it's installed globally automatically, but if you get an error on this line and it says can't find module events, then you just do npm install events in order to get it. So EventEmitter is a class, and I can create subclasses of EventEmitter using the class syntax that I saw before. So for example, class myEventEmitter. Actually, let's call it test event emitter, and I'm using upper camel case here because it's a class name, extends event emitter. And then I can create a constructor, call super, and then inside of this code, I can do whatever I want. So I'm just going to say nothing particularly interesting here. And so this is basically an endpoint that generates events that other bits of code can listen to. So for example, let's go ahead and listen for events. So let me make an event emitter, a test event emitter. So const my event emitter is new test event emitter. And then a piece of code that would listen for an event would be myEventEmitter.on. And then the type of event that I want to listen for. So start, it's going to console.log So that's my event handler. So this thing here, this is a function, an arrow function, that prints got start message as a callback when my event emitter emits a start event. And the way event emitters work, you can have as many different pieces of code that are listening for the same event. So here's another one that's listening for the same event. And maybe one more. So here's 3 pieces of code that are all waiting for a start event. And then I can also listen for other kinds of events. So maybe I want to have an end event as well. A listener got the end event. And maybe we'll have 2 of those. And I could have additional events as well. So as many listeners as I want, as many different kinds of events as I want. And then the way you trigger it is any piece of code that has access to my event emitter can call an emit method on that object. So my event emitter dot emit start, and my event emitter dot emit end. So when this line gets executed, the event emitter is going to emit a start event, and that's going to cause these 3 callbacks to get executed. So it's going to log got start message, a second listener got the start event, a third listener got the start event. And then end is going to be emitted, and that's going to cause these 2 callbacks to get executed. A listener got the end event, a second listener got the end event. So if I run it, create an event emitter, got start message, a second listener got the start event, a third listener got the start event. So that's this event getting emitted. And then these 2 callbacks got executed when that thing got emitted. So this seems pretty simple, but it's actually a really common design pattern that you'll see a lot. And in particular, we're going to be using it to respond to information that gets streamed over a socket. So I'll talk about that in the next video.